Good morning, it's TUBALCAIN once again, and I'm headed on a field trip today. It's been quite a while since I've gone on a field trip, and it's early in the morning. It's about 7 o'clock here in Illinois, and I'm just now getting on Route 39 heading north toward Rockford, where I will start the field trip. Now, I'll be visiting with a man by the name of Josh Clark at a plant that manufactures nuts and bolts and screws. I've never been there, but I'm going on invitation. Hope the traffic isn't too heavy here in Illinois, but I have to stop and pick up my partner in crime, who I often travel with, Dwight. You've seen him in other videos. He's the tractor puller, so you've joined me on several of those trips. So it's raining lightly. I think it's going to clear up a little bit, about 45 degrees. And this is the last little bit of winter here, where spring won't quite come, but we're really anxious for it. But I'm also anxious for this trip and what we can learn and what we can see here in Rockford. Now, Rockford was a major metalworking city, and perhaps still is. Just all kinds of industry there in metalworking. And Josh said that they make an awful lot of nuts and bolts and screws and fasteners. They still do, but originally Rockford was a woodworking town, and because of the need for screws and fasteners, the screw industry grew up around the woodworking industry. But I suppose that's over 100 years ago. So hope you enjoy the little trip today, and I'll be happy to meet this Mr. Clark. I haven't met him except on the phone, so see you in a few minutes. We're in the Illinois Valley and about to cross one of the longer bridges in Illinois. This is the Abraham Lincoln Bridge here at LaSalle, Illinois, crossing the Illinois River. That tower you see over there, I'm not sure if that lighted tower is a cement plant. There's large quantities of limestone around here, so there was, and I guess still is, a thriving cement business. A lot of backwaters here. That's all flood now because we're still in the spring. And the main channel, and this is really a busy river here with barges moving grain primarily. Large quantities of grain. And right at the end of the bridge here, we'll be crossing over. You're not going to be able to see it, but right now the Illinois-Michigan Canal that connects, there it is down there. I ride that towpath quite often on my bicycle. But that canal connected Chicago with the Illinois River at LaSalle, Peru, and was pretty much put out of business shortly after it was started, because the railroad parallels it. And then when the Illinois River waterway opened with a deep channel and dams and all of that in the 30s, that really put the kibosh on the canal. And but it's still it's owned by the state, and a very pleasant place to ride bicycles and to walk and recreational uses. Up here, maybe you're not interested in some of this, but we will be crossing Route 80. So this is a rather important corridor where Route 39 meets Route 80. And of course, this is corn country, but it's too early for any of the crops to be put in. I'm near Troy Grove, Illinois, and this was the birthplace of Wild Bill Hickok. This is a brand new plant here that processes silica sand, and that rail spur there is brand new, where they load the hopper cars with fracking sand. However, I guess the oil price is low enough now to where this is not as active as they expected, but I'm sure it'll pick up. But the entire Illinois Valley has enormous deposits of silica sand and did a lot of glass making where I'm from. And that was the St. Peter's Sand Formation. I'm getting off here at Mendota to pick up my buddy, but that large grain elevator there also has a 1-mile loop of rail track there that is used to load cars with corn, but they've got a big construction project going on there. You might be able to see the cranes, and they're building a plant to grind wheat into flour. Now, we don't raise wheat around here, but the wheat will be brought in on rail cars, and it's all about the usage, I guess, of the rail system up here. It's Burlington Northern. And you see a lot of grain trucks. Matter of fact, there's one ahead of us that would be empty. Constant flow of hopper trucks, like that one just turning off up there. And I'm stopping at McDonald's here to get one of their best meals. You know, I don't care for their food, but they've got 3 things right. The senior coffee, the Egg McMuffin, and the French fries. Well, I've come 103 miles, and here it is, behind the Hinckley truck. And is there a parking place here? Is this the handicapped? And we're here. Here we are at Rockford Secondaries. This is the main entrance. Here I am indoors, and this is Josh, the owner and president and probably CEO and all of that. So how do you do, Josh?
Hi, nice to meet you.
And Josh is going to show us around, and he's been here basically since he was a little boy, coming with his grandfather. So he has cutting oil in his blood, and you can smell the cutting oil as you come in the door. It's quite odoriferous and enjoyable. So on with the tour. This is Jim Clark, the founder of the company in the early years, and then here he is in 2010. Before we go out into the shop, let me make a few comments here about some of the samples I have, as well as things that I wanted to say about the operation there, and it's called Secondary Operations. And thank you, Josh Clark, so much for being a great host and inviting me and my friend there. So I could see behind the scenes what goes on, and Josh is incredibly devoted to this operation. He's been there since he was a young man, used to hang out with his grandfather there when he was just a boy. So he grew up with that cutting fluid in his veins and spends long hours there and seems to enjoy every minute of it. Now, when I went into the factory, it was a little bit different than what I expected. I expected rows and rows of screw machines that would have bar feeders on them. That is, the stock would come in as 12 or 20-foot bars and then be machined. But that's not the way it was. All of the products here that you see, both finished and unfinished, are what I guess are called secondary operations. And that's why the name of the company is what it is. So, for instance here, well, let me say a couple other things and I'll talk about some of these samples here. There's no computers, no CNC. This is all school, old school, great stuff, because you can kind of understand what's going on. And you know, you can see the cutting going on. Now the photography will not be real great. It's handheld camera, kind of jerky. It's noisy in there, so there was not a lot of dialogue. That's why I'm doing this clip here, talking a little bit about that. Josh explained a lot of things to me about what was going on in the machines, but I did not record that, probably unfortunately, but I thought I would come back and do some of that, and then I did not. And we were there for at least 2 hours. A lot of these machines are 50 years old or older. They don't make them anymore, but he had a large quantity of used ones in the back room, which you'll see, and those are either parts machines or they can be brought out into the floor, hooked up and run, but he says he has a lot of trouble finding workers. The Rockford Public Schools cut out their industrial arts vocational some years back, as did almost all schools throughout the United States. So there is just a shortage of workers. He gets people in there, hires them, and they are very enthusiastic for a couple days, and then they do not come back. They just disappear from the face of the earth. And I told you that is so true also in that video I made about from the hammer factories. Watch that video if you haven't seen it. But they can't get people that are willing to work hard, nor do they have the skills. So they don't have the basic skills even of measuring, and that's really important in a factory like this. One thing that really surprised me is that they do almost all the measuring with micrometers. And I don't mean digital, I mean standard micrometers like this. You'll see them on most of the machines. They do not favor calipers. And then some of the inspection then is also done with optical comparators. So you'll see a couple examples of that. I sometimes call those a shadow graph. I do have one myself. I'd like to get it up and running and do some demonstrations on that, but that kind of surprised me that it's all old school measuring, but yet they're producing fine products and millions of parts every day. Alright, this is how the parts come in, and you'll see that later in the video, but for instance this part is brought in and really only 1 or 2 things are done to it, and you'll see the machine that does this. The groove is put on here and this little taper. That's all that's done. This is stainless steel. Then it probably goes out and has some other work done. This is part of an ice cream scoop. Most of you will recognize that. So that's a big customer of theirs to make these. But you can see that's just a secondary operation. Now here's a bolt. I'm not sure what this goes to because they do work for Honda and Toyota and a lot of Chrysler Fiat, and there is a big plant there near Rockford in Belvedere. Hence the model. Well, you won't remember the model Belvedere. Well, you won't remember the model Plymouth. Plymouth Belvederes were named for the city. So some of these products here just go out then and get. I don't know if this is threaded, but you know there are other operations. Sometimes threading, plating. And I don't know what all these parts are. Some of them he explained to me. But for instance, this little part here, this is the raw material. That's the finished one. All they did was to put that little round end on there. But how important is that? So that, and they make millions of those. And then looking at these, are pins for roller chain, and they did all different sizes, number 50s and 35s, and you know, I was going to pose a question one time: how many parts are there, different pieces in 1 foot of number 35 roller chain? It would be interesting to know. This part here, that's the raw material, the way they receive it. That is brass. It goes into a propane grill, a name that everyone would recognize, but there are some things that he didn't want repeated, and I understand that. But then these go and are still plated before they are actually installed in the final product, and the importance here was that it would be spark proof. So that's what they're making out there. A lot of other things as well, and they had sometimes run millions of them, sometimes maybe only 50,000, and then change the setups on the machines. I asked him how long it would take to change the setup, let's say from making this part to this part, and I suspected a whole day, and he said, yeah, sometimes it takes a whole day to set up a machine. And he does most of the setup himself. He would have great difficulty in finding somebody that was capable of doing that. So again, thank you, Josh. So let's go out in the factory. There's a lot of footage. Some of it may not make sense to you. I didn't get enough shots of the vibratory feed bowls, and I thought that is such a neat operation, and what that does is to orient the parts as they are fed, just in bulk. It'll turn them the right direction, and then they'll end up coming down a ramp like this to enter the actual chucking device on the machine. So, all right, that's enough gabbing. Let's go out and look at it. I hope you enjoy the video. Okay, here we are at the first machine. machine isn't running right now. These brass parts are for a major manufacturer of barbecue grills. These parts are for an ice cream scoop. These machines are 50 years old and still running great. nothing but put points on the screw. It's got it covered because of the coolant. This is the Atlas lathe that Josh was running by the time he was 7 or 8 years old. It belonged to his grandpa. Identical to the one that I have in the basement that is a Craftsman. And the gears are still in good shape. Ways are in good shape too. So this is the repair shop and the tooling shop. And this Bridgeport mill here is the reason that Josh and I became acquainted, because he was watching some of my videos regarding the Bridgeport mill. We've got the third pipe. Round and sharp surface grinder. These are the various gears and cams that go on the machines for different jobs. And more over here. Separate the chips from the parts. So you'll get the chips up here, parts come down there to the screen before they get inspected. Alright? And they're just a big blower motor. And in this one, you send parts to a washing unit. This is where they get washed. And then what that does is, because some of the parts sit in here for a month or two at a time, that puts a rust inhibitor on the part so they don't rust on it. Yeah. Just go in here. Parts come out there, chip free to go up that conveyor into that. They drop out here. And they're washed, cleaned, and they have that rust inhibitor on it. Yeah. Here's our graveyard. These are machines I also picked up at that auction. These are spare machines, ready to go to work. All those back there. So there's the graveyard of spare parts. This machine probably made 10 billion parts. Here's a vibratory feed bowls. That looks like brand new. They are. These are brand new feed bowls, never put into work. Butter grinder. Everything waiting to go on the machine. These are parts ready to be machined. This is the way they come in. Those are the chain pins, yeah. Ice cream scoop. Right here at 250,000 pieces. There's 250,000. That's 250,000 pieces in here. I know that if you got that in on that pallet right there, there's 800,000 in those boxes. 800,000, almost a million. That's what we go with your water meter. The water meters, yeah, they put a radius on them. I think they hold the actual meter on. They're just a water meter. Come over here and every run gets audited daily. We run between 800 to a million pieces a week. Wow. 800,000. Put them in the new hoppers. We have little gauges in there that are making sure that the grooves cut in them. Otherwise they'll hold up. Same way over there. Every day there's a running total. These are all the finished products ready to be shipped. Now we got little parts there, and then we're showing up here on the optical comparator, the size, sometimes called the shadow graph, and there's a readout at the top. get spot checked every so many pieces?
Yes, sir. Usually I think about 40 per pan is what our SOP calls for. Just randomly inspected.
So this bowl can pick up to half a thousand oversized the way we have it set the rail. These are inspection bowls that will pick out parts that are oversized or are missing a groove or something like that. So this is just before they get shipped. Final inspection. This is a laser inspector. I guess it's not running right now, but it will pick up very tiny discrepancies. Well, I'm leaving the factory here in Rockford and we're heading back toward home. 103 miles. Had a great visit with Josh. I hope you liked the video and the footage that I shot there and will be of some interest to you. And continue to watch my videos. This is TUBALCAIN saying so long for now.